Thank you so much. So now we are moving to yet another context, journalism. Pascal, you're the rédacteur en chef de l'équipe Détecteur des rumeurs. And so I simply would like to know how your team goes about your work. From my vantage point, I imagine you must sometimes have to work very rapidly, but you also have your journalistic standards, which are very high. So please tell us how this actually works.
Well, we are trying to do 2 articles a week, which means that for each of them we need 2 days' work, which is not much for a scientist point of view, but is much for journalistic point of view. You have to remember that, you have to know that the origins of the Détecteur de rumeurs about 5 years ago was, as a journalist, we noticed that in the years 2000 and 2010, a lot of new kind of news outlets are born in the US and in Europe. News outlets exclusively devoted to fact-checking. I'm thinking some of you may know PolitiFact in the US, or Snopes, or for the French-speaking in you, the website Les Décodeurs by the French-speaking newspaper Le Monde in France. So a lot of at the last account, there were almost 200 of these news outlets, of this kind of news outlets around the world in tens of countries. But about 5 years ago, when we noticed that, and since we were since a long time interested in the topics of disinformation at the Agence Science-Presse, we've noticed that almost all of these news outlets were devoted to politics. That is fact-checking, affirmation, sentence, topics in politics. So we ask ourselves, why not in science? We're not lacking of false information and false rumors. And so this is why the Détecteur de rumeurs is born. We have been lucky enough to have a financing from the Bureau of the Chief Scientist of the Quebec government and something in Quebec called the Bureau de la Coopération Interuniversitaire, which allowed us to hire 1 full-time science journalist, which is, once again, maybe not more for a scientist point of view, only 1 person, but from a science journalist point of view, this is rare, because there are not much science journalists in news media, not enough, and creating a new post, a new job, is something even rarer in Quebec. So this is where we are 3 years later, because it's born now there are 3 years now from the Détecteur de rumeurs, and we could talk a lot about what we discovered, but there is one thing that will be interested for what has been just said about climate change. One thing that we discover is that we must not be too ambitious when you're choosing a topic. For example, it is out of the question to do a fact-checking in 3 pages about is climate change real. We will narrow the question, we will try to choose something that is possible to verify, and that can open the door to some kind of explanation on something larger. For example, 2 years ago, when Donald Trump announced that he was leaving the Paris Accord, his justification was it will cost United States a fortune. Is it the right word in English, fortune? Yes? Well, it's not true, because no country has anything to pay under the Paris Accord. It's a non-mandatory accord. So just explaining that was a way to talk to people who doesn't know anything about the Paris Accord, who doesn't know anything what's inside, and in the meantime to fact-check something that is easy to fact-check. And one last thing, because I know we had only 3 minutes, outside of all these fact-checking texts that we are writing, we began to give, in the last 3 years, conferences in classroom, in a library, even in front of retirees association. Conference about what is fact-checking, what is fake news, how to fight fake news, how to avoid falling in the pitfalls. And we realize how much there is a need for answers about that, because we are not doing much more, a lot of promotion. We are a small news outlet. People, teachers, librarians find us on the web and ask us by email, could you send us somebody to talk to us about fake news and what you're doing and how we can learn about this in 1 hour or 2 hours? The fact that we have so much demand, the fact that with the Quebec Journalists Federation, we have to create a 1 hour presentation about this is for me the indication that there is a need far bigger than what we can imagine here in this room. A need for people who do realize, like all of you, that there is a problem with this fake news phenomenon, but we don't really have the tools as of right now, so how to fight it. It's easy to say that we have to fight it. It's easy to say that we have to be more vigilant, but outside of that, how to teach to your friends and your families how they can find a reliable source. What is a source fiable? What is a credible source outside of science publications? So these are all questions that are out there, but are not easy at all to answer for the general audience, and this is part of the things in which we are now at the Agence Science-Presse, without having, this is something that we didn't ambition when we began that.
Yeah. This is very fascinating to me. The outreach portion, that there's a market for it, and that you can teach in 1 or 2 hours something which gives people, a step forward. Do you sense that after a couple of hours they want more, or yeah?
We discovered a lot of things with this presentation. Yes, they want more. Yes, there will be a place to do a second part, a third part, and but we also realize that there is some tricks that they can learn that are so easy, so evident that after hearing that, they're saying to themselves, yes, there are things elementary that I could do. For example, some of you will laugh at the example, others will be a little bit ashamed, but one of the things we are repeating, especially to kids in the classroom, please don't ever share something on Facebook that you haven't read. And of course, that seems evident, but I'm sure that even in this room, there are people who have shared a news because the title was saying something in which you believe. I like dogs. If I see a title saying that dogs are more intelligent than cats, well, maybe I will share it without checking if the study is really up to date. So this is that kind of tricks and others, but this is the beginning to comment on dit faire un grand ménage en anglais? Make a cleanup in the fake news circulating. If everybody on this planet was taking the habit to never again sharing a news you haven't read or you haven't or a video you haven't watched, well, it would be already a big beginning of a cleanup of fake news.
Well, thanks so much. Well, we're learning useful things here. I'm glad for the diversity of your communications. I wonder if I could get now from you something that is perhaps a juicy story.